In a perfect world, we wouldn't actually start this show where we're going to start it today. We have to begin our broadcast with the results of what amounts to a complete sideshow, a legal circus, a spectacle, and a deliberate diversion. But here we are. So first and foremost, we should make clear today's ruling from Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee was actually a victory for the rule of law and for Fani Willis herself. In the matter of the DA's relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade, the judge's ultimatum amounted to this: either leave Wade behind or halt the prosecution of this case altogether. Turned out to be a pretty easy choice for DA Willis to make, a pointedly determined public figure. Remember what she said when she announced the indictment.
The state's role in this process is essential to the functioning of our democracy. Georgia, like every state, has laws that allow those who believe that results of an election are wrong, whether because of intentional wrongdoing or unintentional error, to challenge those results in our state courts. The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
So nothing that happened today changed any of that. But all the same, late this afternoon, DA Fani Willis accepted Nathan Wade's resignation, which means the case will move forward as planned. Consider the fact that even in losing, though, Trump world got most of what it wanted. Right now, as we speak, there are emails flooding MAGA inboxes, disingenuously shouting, "Look here, Fani Willis is corrupt." No legitimacy to that, but it goes even beyond those attacks. Consider the motion to remove Fani Willis and Wade from the Fulton County case. It was filed on January 8th, 67 days ago. Trump's team ran out the clock for 2 months, an exceptionally exasperating development for the rule of law crowd, given what we discussed on this program yesterday. That is how successful Trump has been in deploying a tactic of delay at all costs. Election Day resembles a potential off-ramp for the disgraced ex-president and his legal troubles. And only 8 months now separate the American people from the prospect of that. Above all, though, we should never forget what this case was about. It's about a sitting president actively working to undermine the results of a free and fair election. And here's what happened when he did.
Changing some of that West Carolina for backup.
Peaceful people. These were great people. The crowd was unbelievable. And I mentioned the word love, the love in the air. I've never seen anything like it.
So despite hours of droning punditry about what did and didn't happen there, that's what this is about. And the upshot is this. Team Trump came for the king, or the queen in this instance, and they missed. Game on. Here to start us off on this this extraordinary day of news again, some of our most favorite experts and friends. Former lead investigator for the January 6th Select Committee, Tim Heaphy's back. With me at the table, MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, host of Politics Nation here on MSNBC and the president of the National Action Network, the Reverend Al Sharpton's here, and host of the Fast Politics podcast and special correspondent for Vanity Fair, Molly Jong-Fast is here. Tim Heaphy, I am catching up still. I was out for a little bit. And one of the things I'm catching up on is Alvin Bragg's case, which is about Trump allegedly having sex with a porn star while he was married and then allegedly paying money to cover it up so it didn't come out ahead of an election. This is about two single people who had a relationship in the middle of prosecuting an ex-president. It feels like sometimes we stare so closely at the trees that we miss the forests.
Yeah, exactly right, Nicole. This is a distraction because it doesn't touch the core allegations in this case. This was not, none of the issues at stake in Judge McAfee's ruling today bear in any way upon the charged conduct of the defendants, right? This is a separate issue. It's, however, a legitimate issue. It's a legitimate issue because prosecutors have a higher duty. Judge McAfee goes on for pages in his opinion about the fact that prosecutors are held to a very high ethical standard, and there can't have any actual or apparent conflicts of interest. And there are ethical rules to this effect. The prosecutors are held to a higher standard. And this issue of the relationship between the district attorney and the special assistant district attorney who's leading the prosecution, or was until this afternoon, has been a huge distraction, really an unforced error, because again, it doesn't touch the very strong evidence of these defendants' guilt, but it caused a 67-day delay in getting to the courtroom. I think Judge McAfee has made a very sound choice to find that there's no evidence of an actual conflict of interest, misconduct, but there's an appearance issue that the DA supervising a person with whom she's had a romantic relationship, it causes potential suspicion about whether she's making decisions strictly in the interest of justice or personal relationships. So Mr. Wade stepping away makes a lot of sense. Hopefully it allows them to move forward and get back to the core issues in the case, whether or not there's a racketeering conspiracy intended to disrupt the election. That's where we need to get to, Nicole, as we keep talking about on this show. It's time for these allegations to have their day in court, all the sideshows, all the motions to be resolved so that we finally get to decide, a jury or juries get to decide whether or not the government's proven its case.
Lisa Rubin, you are, I think, have the official role of tracking the calendar for us. Is there any chance that what Tim Hafey just described happens in this case ahead of the election?
I think it's really difficult at this point for it to happen. We basically just wasted, as Tim said, he counted the days, 67 days, from January 8th when Ashley Merchant filed this motion till today. We have done nothing else in this case other than pay heed to these motions. Now, Scott McAfee granted a minor motion yesterday, one that got a lot more press, I think, than it deserved in terms of its impact on the case. Okay, so he decided a small motion, but really the bulk of these 67 days has been taken up by what Tim characterized rightly as a sideshow. How you get this case back on track now when you've lost the quarterback is a really difficult proposition, Nicole. I think it's really unlikely this case gets tried before the election unless some measures are taken to, for example, triage. You pull off some defendants, you try it more than once, a bunch of people plead out. You know, accepting those circumstances, I don't see how this happens.
Fani Willis charged a really aggressive and tight set of facts. None of that is at issue. No one has anything to say about the facts in this case or the charges. And again, before I stepped away, every other day someone was pleading guilty in her sweeping racketeering case. This is, though, as Tim's pointing out and as others have pointed out, a successful sideshow on Trump's point. He got the delay that he may have needed to make sure that no trial happens before the election.
I think that what a lot of us should look into the other side of that. One side says that he wants to delay it till after the election. But the fact is that even if he does, he cannot dismiss or pardon himself from state charges, both in New York with Alvin Bragg or with Fani Willis in Fulton County. So what I suggest is that maybe he or his attorneys believe he's going to be convicted. Why would you stall it, Mr. President, unless you know you're going to be convicted and the evidence is so overwhelming? Because you really are stalling what is inevitable. You're going on trial, whether it's before or after the election. So what you're stalling is trying to go to jail. The other thing I think that are big losers here are some of his co-defendants, because if they had ruled Fani Willis could not try this and it had gone to another county and it may have never gone to court, Giuliani and everybody else charged would have had another day. They had a bad night last night because When they ruled today that Fani Willis could stay there, that means Rudy Giuliani and all of the cohorts has a day in court now and a day probably of conviction. And I think that we're missing a lot of that. So, yes, I'd like to see it before the election, but I know subliminally Donald Trump must really feel he's going to be convicted. That's what he's really stalling for, aside from the election.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, there isn't anything more to the legal strategy. And because there are so many cases, you can analyze them across the documents case and the January 6th federal case and the Georgia case and Alvin Bragg's case, that there isn't a defense on the facts. And we know that he tries all of his issues in the court of public opinion. There is no pushback on the facts.
No. And in fact, what he did was he put the justice system on trial, right? He said, this is a corrupt system. It's them, not me. He really made this yet another campaign event. The other thing is he spent millions of dollars trying to delay. And, you know, every time people are talking about Fani Willis and Nathan Wade, they're not talking about Donald Trump and fake electors.